The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is the role of big data in business transformation. And our guest speaker today is Srinivasan Govindarajulu, Senior Director and Practice Head, Enterprise Information Management with Virtusa. He is the Senior Director and Practice Head, Enterprise Information Management at Virtusa, a well-known information technology services provider with a global reach. He possesses more than 25 years of experience in business and technology consulting and building global practices in the field of business intelligence, analytics, and corporate performance management. He is a recognized thought leader in the field of big data and analytics and has held several leadership positions in large IT services companies. So, without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Srinivasan.
Thank you, Aradhana. Good afternoon to all of you. I'm very glad to meet you all through this forum to talk about the role of big data in business transformation. So at the outset, let me clarify that this is not a technology presentation, nor is this a pure business presentation. So the objective of this talk today is to suggest to you the role of big data in transforming businesses, the kind of transformational potential that big data initiatives have. So hopefully at the end of this presentation, you should be able to see some of the applications of big data in various sectors, and also to give you an idea of what things are possible with application of big data and the various related technologies. So without further ado, let me move on to the agenda slide. So I hope you're able to see this next slide as I'm moving on to that. So it's taking some time. So I hope you can see this agenda slide now. So I'm going to talk about what business transformation entails. So what are the various themes which companies employ to ensure transformational initiatives succeed. I'm going to talk about market trends in big data very briefly to give you an overview of what happens in the big data space right now, and also to talk about analytics, because I believe that big data and analytics are two sides of the same coin. So I'm going to talk about big data and analytics and how it accelerates transformation. There is also this recurring question in many people's minds as to how big data and enterprise data warehouses coexist. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So that's a technology piece. So how big data and enterprise data warehouses together can deliver transformation. So that's going to be one of the themes of the presentation. So after this introduction is over, I'm moving on to the core part of my presentation, which is to discuss industry use cases. I've taken up certain specific use cases in insurance sector, banking, and travel and leisure industry, just to show the kind of potential that is possible with big data. So with this, you should be able to, in a position to look at next steps and how we can, look at various big data technologies to ensure that the transformational potential is realized. So these are the themes that I'm going to cover. So I'm going to take about 40 minutes. So after that, it's open to questions from your side. So moving on to the next slide. So this slide is about business transformation in this current what we call millennial era. So traditionally, if you look at, there have been three major themes around which all transformational initiatives have been structured. So one is the theme of product leadership. So we all know the kind of success that Apple has had, primarily due to the kind of product innovation and the kind of disruptive technologies they brought in their product. So product leadership is one of the themes for business transformation. And the second theme is service excellence. So we are all aware of the kind of service that we get when we walk into a five-star hotel or in a Starbucks coffee or in any niche service provider. So that's another theme around which many companies base their business transformation. The third aspect or the third theme of business transformation has been about operational excellence or streamlined operations and processes and quality. So well-known examples here will be, let's say, Toyota Motors, or in Indian context, the Tata Group, known for their operational excellence. So if you look at from a business point of view, so these are the three themes that companies use to do a lot of business transformation, and all these are based on several performance metrics. So what we are seeing today is that customers are communicating with businesses and transacting in a lot more new ways. So to take a simple example, so there's a lot more online transactions today. So there's a lot more transactions through business using social media. So what we are seeing today is a data deluge, and therefore we see that the companies that manage this huge amount of data flowing in can use that to their advantage, whether they want to excel in product leadership or in service excellence or in operational excellence. So traditionally, so there have been a lot of data-driven decisions in all these three areas, but the trend that we are seeing today is those decisions alone are not enough, and big data, the power of big data has to be leveraged to ensure that these three themes are fully leveraged on. So moving on to the next slide. I hope you can see that now. This is about what analysts and consultants are talking about as far as big data is concerned. So the market verdict is that BI, business intelligence, and analytics fed by big data is a huge growth area right now. So it will remain as a top priority for all chief information officers or chief technology officers in this coming decade. So what we are seeing is that therefore that all the CIOs and CTOs who are concerned about IT-led business transformation are looking at big data and looking at the associated technologies or the background technologies of business intelligence, analytics, and data warehouses as a very critical area for investment. So at the same time, what we are also seeing is that there is a critical shortage of data scientists, and that you can see here that the McKinsey estimates that there is a huge supply-demand gap as far as data scientists are concerned. So what we are seeing here is why at one end we are seeing tremendous growth in the big data technologies, at the other end there are tremendous opportunities for application into business problems. We also see a huge gap growing in the way that people who are comfortable in applying these technologies to business problems, there's a huge skill gap. And that is what is at next end my presentation I'm going to talk about, to show that there is tremendous potential in all the sectors to apply big data, but the problem is to find the competency, to find the techniques, and to apply them at the right place at the right time. So this is going to be a priority for all CIOs to ensure that their investments in IT, in especially in analytics and big data, lead to business transformation. And the areas that I have mentioned are product leadership, service excellence, and operational excellence. So these are the three themes around which my presentation is built. And to move on to my next slide, which is about how these key trends are actually enabling transformation. I hope you're able to see this slide now. So this is about what we have seen so far, that initially the emphasis was on accelerated business outcomes. I mean, companies are talking about building integrated ecosystems, and the next development of in-memory computing came, and then there is a lot of cloud-based analytics right now. So we're talking about new things like a lot of smart devices, the Internet of Things, a lot of geospatial analytics. So the new technologies are actually pushing the frontiers of innovation. So we see a lot of new things happening right now. But what we are also seeing is that the concept of a single data repository has gone. So now what we are seeing is the integration between an enterprise data warehouse, Hadoop technologies, data visualization, and also a lot of social media analytics. So the combination of all this is ensuring that companies are able to do a lot more predictive analytics than what they were doing earlier. So today companies are able, enterprises are in a position to understand consumer behavior much better, to ensure that fraud detection, claims analytics, and these kinds of things are based on a lot more reliable and robust data. So with all these things, so what is it that companies can do to prepare? So one of the things is that with this kind of big data technologies, companies are today empowered to understand customer needs a lot better. And when we talk about customers, we are talking about a distinctly different kind of customers whom today's world we call as millennial customers. Customers who have a different mindset, customers who are what we may call as digital natives, people who are comfortable using these technologies and therefore demand a lot more from their organizations. So therefore, organizations today have to respond to these young, millennial, technology-savvy, digital native customers to ensure that their solutions are configured to the needs of these customers. So what it means in competency terms for organizations is that they have to build on their existing data warehouse and BI, existing Hadoop technologies, advanced analytics competencies, and build on that and focus on cloud-based solutions, focus on mobility devices, ensure that data scientists are available to process all this, and then to provide the solution or the service that your end customer technology is what customers are going through in the coming slides. So moving on to my next to show that what people mean by advanced analytics or big data. So big data means many things to many people. And to some people it means just social media analysis, to some people it means a lot of data mining, to some people it means time series data, some interpret it as just pure predictive modeling or optimization. But the fact is that big data encompasses all this. So when we say big data, and as I said earlier, advanced analytics goes with the term of big data, so they are two sides of the same coin, and both of them represent this and a lot more. But to summarize, so what big data captures is 4 different factors or attributes, which is what you are seeing in this slide. So deriving value from unstructured data. That seems to be the theme for many big data initiatives in companies today. So there's a lot of unstructured data about customers, about partners, about various stakeholders on new opportunities, on risk identification, risk management, and innovative ways of meeting the customers. So this is what most of the companies are today tapping in. So whether you use text analytics, which is about the kind of written messages that your customers are either sending to you in emails or in various other social media forums. So you can do text analytics. You can do sentiment analysis because you can look at the moods of your customers. So segmentation is no longer about just the psychographics or the demographics of the customers, but also about the psychological moods and the kind of personality and the kind of behavior that people are engaging in. So there is a social media buzz, which is to get a better understanding of customer preferences, market trends, and brand awareness. So all that is possible through advanced sentiment analysis techniques. So the other thing that's happening is business intelligence is today in a position to integrate a lot of structured and unstructured data. You see that in a lot of data visualization techniques, which are no longer relying on simple traditional, hard quantifiable metrics, but also a lot of qualitative metrics are built into your dashboards and scorecards and things like this. So if you put all these things together, text analytics or sentiment analytics or integration of structured and unstructured data, social media analysis, so all this put together ensure that you are able to handle the high volume of data, the velocity, the sense that a lot of real-time data is coming in, and the variety, which refers to both structured and unstructured, to ensure that you get right value out of this big data. So the theme for many big data initiatives and whatever transformational work that companies are doing is based on the fact that I can make sense out of this huge amount of structured and unstructured data that is coming in from my customers, from my partners, from even my employees. So this is the transformational theme that we are going to spend time today. So moving on to the next slide, which is again to show how analytics have kind of evolved and progressed over the last few years. I think this slide is up now and you can see that. So it is matured from being a very reactive kind of exercise to being very real time and diagnostic as well as prescriptive. So to ensure that value is increased both for the company and for the customers. So in the initial days, what we call as analytics 1 was more of integrating the existing BI systems. The focus was on more on ensuring that value is derived out of the data warehouses. It was more out of the passion or the desire to ensure that a lot of data is put in some kind of a data repository, which is basically your enterprise data warehouse. And then of course you put your business intelligence systems on top of the enterprise data warehouse to ensure that you get meaningful insights. From that today, it's moved on to an era where the emphasis is on understanding large, fast-moving data. So you don't want to wait till your ETL or data integration process takes time to make sense of the data. So we want to experience data as it comes in. So as customers are pouring out their O's or happiness about a particular product, I mean, we want to capture that and see what sense can we make out of that. So on the third dimension to analytics today, the third wave of analytics as one may call, is to ensure that both traditional analytics and big data is combined together to ensure that measurable business results are obtained. So this is again taking us back to the theme of transformation. So today we are saying we don't want to do analytics for the sake of analytics. We want to ensure that whatever we do in analytics or big data, ensure that it makes a big impact as far as our transformation is concerned, that it takes us closer to the customers. It takes us closer to the kind of performance excellence that we want. So this is a theme which is driving many industries, and some of these use cases is what we are going to see as I move through my presentation. So moving on to my next slide, which is again to talk about why big data is being used today and what's the kind of benefits that companies are looking at. So one of the key things that we have seen is that the adoption of analytics is actually driving real change in the way companies are operating, especially in realizing competitive advantage. So here are some facts which show that today there has been a tremendous increase, and as of 2012 there were about 63% of the companies reporting that they're actually using big data to create competitive advantage. In some companies' case, it actually goes to the extent of even creating a new business model. So there are two good things here. One is we see two aspects to see. One is that there is quite a lot of companies looking at big data for competitive advantage. So that means a lot more focus on optimizing your marketing, a lot more focus on understanding your customers and managing your campaigns better and things like this. But it also means that there is quite a lot of customers, 37% customers in this case, who are still looking at big data as a pure technology initiatives and maybe not getting the same competitive advantage that the others are getting. So one of the increasing focus today that we see across companies in various sectors is that what can we do to get the real value out of big data? So how does it shift from being a pure technology initiative to becoming a pure business-led initiative? So that seems to be the recurring theme for many organizations today. And this chart goes in a way to reflect that theme. So let me summarize what I have been discussing in big data and analytics so far before I move into the use cases of various sectors. So this is the next slide, which is talking about how big data has moved from the traditional focus of storing a lot of data, so from byte storage as I call it here, to more of delivering insights. So today the need for that is that one is, of course, we all know that unstructured data is kind of exploding. I mean, today companies can access tremendous amount of unstructured data, whether it's emails or videos or photos or social media posts. So that a quantum of data has been growing. So that's something that companies have to contend with. The second thing is that no longer do we have to throw away any information. So earlier the emphasis was always on how to optimize storage, but today we are in an age where we are asking, can we afford to throw away any information, because storage costs have become very low. So today the infrastructure is available, the facility is available to ensure that tools can process terabytes of data and faster and cheaper. So storage costs have become low. And what we have seen is that the research after research, survey after survey has proven that big data analytics actually leads to huge productivity gains. So whatever be the sector, whether it's banking or healthcare or insurance. So analytics is not beyond the reach anymore of many companies, whether it's small or big, whatever be the sector. So what we see today is that you can derive a lot of value out of analytics, and you can do it in real time, and you can do it really cheap and faster. So this is in a way summarizing what companies have come to realize about big data and analytics, and therefore having given this introduction, now we are in a position to move towards specific use cases, whether it is bank or insurance or telco. I am just going to take 3 sectors, but hopefully this applies to all the other sectors, and you can see a lot more transformational opportunities if you get the crux of what I'm talking about today. So one of the other questions that always comes up is, okay, given that big data has a lot of business potential, so what about the technology angle? So how do we ensure that one has built a huge data warehouse and the business intelligence, technology architecture, how do I ensure that this architecture coexists with big data? So does it mean I have to throw away all that investments that I have made into data warehousing? So how do I kind of leverage or combine these two, or how do I synergize these two aspects of data management? So the good news is that actually EDW and big data coexist. This is what most of the successful companies which have run big data pilots and we are leveraging on big data have realized. That the only thing is that the approach and the focus is quite different in both cases. So as you can see from the slide here, if you look at the traditional or the classical enterprise data warehouse method, the approach has been like this. The business determines what questions to ask. So people go and collect the requirements from the business. The business tells, these are the kind of analysis I want to do. This is the kind of slicing and dicing I want to do. This is the extent of drill down I want to do. And then the classic enterprise data warehouse method is to ensure that we build a repository which will provide you that kind of structured and repeatable analysis. So then IT structures the discussions around those questions, right? So here the essence is about capturing only what data is required. So this has been traditionally the theme of data warehousing, and this has been quite successful, and it will continue to be so. Whereas if you look at the method of big data, it is about providing a platform for storing and analyzing all kinds of data sources, irrespective of where it comes from, in what form, in what kind of real-time or non-real-time basis. So all we are saying is that capture all the data about your business and don't worry about whether this makes sense right now or not. You get all the information that you want, and then use your big data methods, which will provide all kinds of multi-structured analysis. It could be your sentiment analysis or it could be your text analysis. So one does all this with the data that's accumulated, and then the business gets into an exploration mode and then finds out what are the questions worth asking. What is it that we don't know yet about our customers? What is it that we can do differently as far as our customers are concerned? So the whole idea is the reverse of what EDW does, and therefore one can have an hybrid approach. One can have both. I mean, you can have a EDW approach as well as the big data approach to ensure that they coexist. So there are various technologies today to ensure that these don't operate in silos, that we can have the same platform. There are technology vendors who provide the same platform to ensure your traditional data warehouses coexist your big data kind of approach and analysis. So this is something that I want to emphasize right at the beginning, so that you don't see big data as something that is going to throw away all the investments that have been made in the existing current data warehouse infrastructure. So the other interesting thing from a technology perspective that we are seeing, so I moved on to the next slide, which is talking about how data warehouses today coexist also with other related technologies. So what we are seeing today in the market is that data warehouse and business intelligence collaborates with disruptive technology areas to leverage the power of big data. So it could be cloud, or it could be your customer experience management, or it could be mobility. So what we are seeing is that an integration across these various solutions and various practices. So you can see several new things happening here. It could be clickstream analytics, it could be your social media analytics, location-based services, mobile-based business intelligence. So all of them are coming together, and big data is impacted by this kind of convergence of these various technologies and solutions. So this is the introduction that I wanted to give you. It has taken a little bit more than I have planned. Let me quickly go through some of these use cases that I wanted to talk about. So let me start with banking and financial services, a sector which all of us are familiar with. And let's see what's the kind of role that big data can play, especially given the transformational themes that I talked about. So I'm on to my slide which talks about new realities for banks. So I'll wait for some time for this to come up on your screens. Yes, I think you can all see it now. So I'm talking about new realities for banks. So there are two different dimensions or aspects that I'm talking about here. Is one, we all know that the banks have entered into what one may call as the brave new world, where they're expected to know each and every customer and each and every customer's needs and moods and aspirations and plans and things like this. And also the concern of these banks to ensure that these customers get the digitally satisfying experience. So ensure that there is a digital platform which provides its customers a completely satisfying experience from a technology point of view. And which also means that the banks have to understand the life stage needs of the customers whether he's a young person looking for a credit card or he's an old person looking for a retirement pension benefit plan and things like this. And therefore, the concern for the banks today is that, am I leveraging technology enough to ensure that we can offer the right products at the right time? If necessary, configure a product quickly and give it to our customers. So that's on one side is the kind of questions which are very technology specific, which are very innovation centered kind of questions that banks are facing. But if you look at the other side, so it's more of back to basics. Banks know that the basis of their business is to ensure that a lot of information is kept confidential, trust and confidentiality is important, and money has to be managed well. So therefore risk management should be an integrated part of your culture and it should not be an afterthought, and customer is the core of the business. So we don't want to push customers into taking new products or new services if it doesn't give them great financial benefits. So banks have to somehow balance these two things. One is which is very innovation centric and the other one which is very stability and risk management and governance centric. So this is one challenge that we see for banks today, and these challenges have to be addressed through proper information and data management. So that's a given, and that's where big data, in our opinion, is playing a big role. To have a deeper look at that, I'm moving on to my next slide, which is showing, so what are the constraints today that banks have? I think this slide is now up on your screens. So we're talking about the need for banks to go and meet the customers where they work and play. And so this is something that's very important. So today, if you look at some of the problems that banks are facing, one will be the constraints in collaborating with all the stakeholders, with your customers and the employees, and bringing them to a common platform. So there are constraints in that. And then there is an inability to introduce new products quickly because there are a lot of regulatory requirements, a lot of compliance requirements, there are a lot of gaps in understanding what customers need, and therefore the new product introduction takes time. And the third is, of course, lack of a holistic view, what one calls a 360-degree view of customers. So if you look at all these problems, these are all problems for some trained eyes. They look purely as information or data management problems. So which is what big data, many banks are today using big data to address these problems of having a 360-degree view of the customer, to ensure that new product introduction happens in near real time, and also to ensure that there is a digital platform which will minimize the constraints of collaboration. So the next question, natural question therefore is to ask, what are the capabilities that will help drive transformation in banking and financial services? So this is the topic of the next slide, which is up on your screens right now. So the answers come from doing customer profiling and segmentation. When I say segmentation, micro-segmentation, to the extent that we are able to know customers one-on-one basis. And then, of course, predictive models for customer behavior, which is not only based on structured data, but a lot of unstructured data, to track even the moods of customers and to track their life events and to see what kind of, how their financial needs change before they even articulate it, to understand their needs and see what products we can provide. And then having a 360-degree view of customers across the enterprises. So if he is having multiple accounts or multiple needs for multiple financial products, to have a complete view of that customer. And also to combine all this with governance, risk and compliance, which is, as I said, the basis of how banks operate. So all this is having a, the combined aspect of all this is having a big impact on transformational initiatives, and this is where big data comes into play. So I'm just going to run through quickly a few slides which will take a very simple example and see how one of the big data technologies and how it can provide this kind of a transformational opportunity for a bank. So basically we are focused on business outcome here. So we are looking at a three-step process where all the existing applications and processes are understood well, and we are looking for insights that can solve pain points in these processes. Let's take a simple process here which is outlined here, where a customer has a billing question, and then he goes through that IVR route, and then there is an agent talking to him, and then the problem is discussed and the solution is proposed, and then the agent receives the next best offer and pitches it to the customer, and the customer accepts it. So this is a typical process that goes on. And what we are seeing today is the effort of banks to build in some kind of a big data dimension into this traditional process of a customer interacting with an agent and getting a product of his choice. Okay? I'm moving to the next slide, which is showing some details of this process. I think this slide is now up on your screen. So how can we translate this to a bank's customer care process? So what we see here is that there is a process which is starting with the customer's account question and ends with an agent making a pitch and the customer accepting. So you see that process here with the various steps in between. But what are the big data component technologies that are available today for banks to empower the agents in this entire process? So we have here agent optimization, we have forecast optimization, we have speech analytics, social media analytics, systems which provide what we call as next best offer, and text analytics to handle unstructured data. So time doesn't permit me to get into these various component technologies, but today what we are seeing is that these technologies, standard tools, a lot of standardized validated frameworks are available to ensure that these various tools are used to ensure that the right insights are available to the agent at various steps in this process. So we are trying to show a glimpse of that in the next slide. So this is to identify the benefits of the differentiation levers that the bank wants to address. So here one of the objectives when the agent talks to the customer is that we want to drive the sales conversion rate. We want to understand the agent conversation and extract the relevant data, analyze it and feed it back to the agent quickly with the next, what we call as next best action. So today with a lot of big data advances and big data technologies, so a lot of what they call as NBA systems are available, next best action kind of systems are available to ensure that feedback can go back to the agent and he can enrich the whole process. Okay, so this is one of the simplest ideas of transformation that I wanted to talk about in banks. So one can of course build on it and look at every process with this kind of a potential to see how various analytics assets can be used to ensure that processes are enriched. Okay. I'll move on to a related example which is in the field of insurance. So you will see on your screen an outlay of a process, the traditional claims management process. So the traditional insurance claims management process is always focused on a lot of fraud detection, ensuring that the claim gets routed to the right person, and then minimal time is spent on the claims analysis process and things like that. So you see here is typical claims management process where the loss notice is received, claims created, and the loss is assessed and the payment is made along with the necessary investigation. So these are all various associated analytical things that one has to do when a traditional claims management process is enforced. But one of the interesting things that we are seeing today from a big data perspective is that today we are in a position to flag suspicious cases much earlier than what it was, based on the kind of social media data that's available, based on the 360-degree review of the customer and things like this. Today we are able to predict the duration of the handling process, how we can fast track it and things like this. And more interestingly, what we are also seeing is that based on the way claims process is managed, through big data, companies are also realizing that you can actually identify a lot of cross-sell and upsell opportunities. So this is something which is totally new as far as big data and insurance is concerned. That what was once seen as a simple, operational process is actually now available for a lot more business potential, a lot more opportunities and ideas for business potential. So there's a lot of opportunities for early recovery, a lot of opportunities for cross-sell for satisfied customers. So how is this possible through big data? So I'll just give a brief picture of what it is, though I cannot get into the details. I can give a brief overview of how big data makes all this possible. So what you are seeing on your slide on your screen right now is a slide which talks about big data approach to claims analytics for fraud identification and customer profiling. So the traditional customer profiling for insurance companies have been based on few risk factors, based on let's say age and marital status and certain demographic characteristics and things like this, and you build a risk profile. But today, with the kind of unstructured data that's available, the kind of third-party data that's available, and you can get more feedback through surveys and campaigns and ratings and things like this. So one can build much richer customer profile. So once you build that kind of a profile, so therefore you can go back to your business rules and see whether those business rules are adequate in the light of the new customer data that you have. So people today are realizing from the social media data of customers that the risk management profile can be substantially enhanced. And once that is done, then you apply your traditional data warehouse processes, MapReduce, and big data technologies, and then do your data visualization in a different way. So the whole idea is that, so earlier what was seen as claims analytics was seen as something just helping fraud identification. Today, big data is ensuring that claims analytics is actually not only doing fraud identification, but also ensuring that marketing opportunities are uncovered, that cross-sell opportunities are uncovered. That so we are looking at customers who are making certain claims and go back to them and see how this whole claims management process can be enhanced and the new opportunity can be kind of uncovered. So the traditional fraud detection models are actually combined with non-traditional data sources, as this picture shows, and the whole idea is to ensure that customer interactions are optimized. So again, what we are relying on, as in the case of the bank, is sentiment analytics, social media analytics, and your predictive analytics. So there are other examples that I can walk you through, which is again in the field of travel and leisure and entertainment, and also in the field of telco. But the approach is same. It's about bringing in the big data perspective from a social media analysis, from sentiment analysis perspective, to ensuring that new business opportunities are uncovered. So I would rather skip those slides. I'll straight away take you to my summary slide and ensure that I have enough time to for questions. So you will see here on your screen a kind of summary slide which talks about big data business model maturation index. So on one side of what you see here, various kinds of analytics that can be done. So one can do operational analytics, predictive analytics, prescriptive. So there are various ways you can look at analytics differently. But on the other side, what you are seeing is how the maturity of analytics, the application of analytics has improved. So from pure business monitoring to ensure that you get business insights, to ensure that your business is optimized, and then your data is monetized, and then to the extent of transforming your whole business, or identifying a totally new source of competitive advantage, or ensuring that your total business model gets changed is what companies are looking at. So some of the examples that I talked about today, whether it's bank or insurance, is all about moving from simple business monitoring to business transformation. So for many companies, this journey is quite exciting, quite challenging, and the evolution path is very different for different companies. There are banks which have embraced big data technology, almost wholeheartedly, and then they ensure that through various processes they understand what they can do better. So for some, this process takes a lot of time. Some of the traditional large organizations will take time to understand how to ensure that your data monetization or business transformation happens. So they may have a lot of groundwork to do before they do that. For example, in insurance companies, they do a lot of data lineage and data cleansing work before they can even think of monetizing the data or transforming their businesses. So the journey is very different for different enterprises, but it's a very exciting journey. It's a journey which promises the fulfillment of the original promise of technology, which is to ensure that business gets transformed for the better. So this is a summary, a nutshell of what I wanted to talk about today. I've taken maybe 40 minutes. So as I promised, I'll stop here and then I'm ready to take questions.
Hello, Srinivasan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Radhana. I'm waiting for the questions.
Yes, sorry, there was some technical glitch. I was not able to get through to you. And first of all, I would say thanks for the insightful presentation, Srinivasan. I would request you to read out the questions and their answers so that all our users may listen to your insights. So you
Okay.
would be able to see the questions right about now. Are you able to see them?
Yeah, I can see there's a question which asks what are the tools available in the market to store and analyze big data. So the answer to that is there are a lot of open source technologies available. There are also proprietary technologies available in the market. So technologies are available from all the enterprise software vendors, whether it's IBM or Oracle or SAP. There are tools available, and there are also certain niche analytical tools available which are open source like R and things like this. So the related question to that is what are the tools available in the market from a COTS and the open source perspective? I answered that. So there are open source tools like R and certain analytical tools, and there are also commercial tools, which is basically all the, if you look at all the business intelligence service providers and software providers, whether it is SaaS or whether it is IBM, Oracle, SAP, so they all have a business in big data component to their existing business intelligence infrastructure. So then the other question is what is meant by unstructured data. So that's fairly simple. So basically any data which is not in a quantified form. So it can be a large text, or it can be a photograph, or it can be a video image and things like this. So that's unstructured data. So like a customer complaint which comes in, right? So it doesn't come in a very quantified form. So that's the data that we deal with. Or the sentiment of a customer which is expressed in a social media post. That's again an unstructured data. So then there is another question which is again interesting. This question is, if business determines what questions to ask, then doesn't that mean they are on top of data? Sometimes data gives options that even business has not even heard or imagined. That's a good question. The answer is that that's exactly what big data is trying to do. So it is saying that business knows certain things about customers, but there are a lot of things that they don't know. And therefore, the whole idea of big data is that I'm going to give back to customers a tremendous amount of customer information, a very rich profile of customers, which will enable them to think through and see, is there any particular need of the customer that I have not met? Okay. So there is one more question that has come up, which is what do you mean by speech analytics? I think here speech analytics, there is something called text analytics, there's something called speech analytics. And speech analytics in a nutshell is that people are looking at the changes in their tone, the changes in the various language related things and things like this. So from the tone you find out whether the customer is angry or very upset with what's being presented and things like this. So there is a question on for something like insurance claim where it's based on hard copy model via paper submissions. How does the data gets converted into soft copy? So I understand that this question is more in terms of where the conversion. So it's more a business process related question. So it's about how the data is actually processed. So that's fairly simple. I think there's a lot of hard copy that gets converted into soft copy, but today we are also having a lot of insurance claims which is processed online. So it already comes to you in a soft format. And today most of the insurance companies are pushing customers to ensure that most of the transactions are online. So there's no question of this traditional problems associated with converting hard copy to soft copy. So there is another question about what big data can do in terms of multi-structural and iterative analysis. So I think this question is more related to the kind of data mining that can be done through big data. So big data involves this kind of iteration. So what we call as allowing the system to learn. So for example, if you take customer segmentation, so you may segment it first, let's say on 10 parameters, and then as you learn more, you do one more iteration and segment it into 20 different categories and then 50 different categories and so on. So this is an inbuilt feature for many analytical tools. So what is called as, there are various algorithms to ensure that this happens. So I don't want to get into the details, but just to give you a clue, there are algorithms like neural network and things like this which will ensure that you are able to do this kind of iterative analysis. So there is a question about algorithms available for predictive analysis. So I mentioned that. So and also a question about accuracy of these predictions. So I just want to make one thing clear: there's no such thing as 100% accuracy in prediction. So there's always a certain amount of probability associated with that. But what we are seeing today is a lot of newer algorithms in the market, which is based on machine learning, which is based on neural networks, which are able to provide much higher levels of accuracy than what was possible through traditional, regression or decision tree kind of algorithms. So there is a question about what are the factors that ensure the success of a big data project. I think absolutely important question. So there is no single answer to that. So one, you need to be very clear about technology, and you need to be very clear about what is the business problem you're trying to solve. So many companies which are fascinated by big data but don't have a clear problem to solve, so they get onto a lot of very basic social media analysis kind of work and things like this, and they don't end up anywhere. So the best way to start a business big data project is to ensure that the business problem and the pain point is very clearly defined, and then you address your technology to that. So, and then of course more importantly, to put the right people on the job. As I said earlier, data scientists are a very difficult breed to get. So your chances of success in the big data project is better if you put a person with an analytical mindset, a person who understands the business context well. So there is another question on how does Virtusa approach big data cases. Does companies approach you with optimization scenarios, or Virtusa have a product suite for big data transformation? To answer that question, yes, Virtusa has a big data framework. We are not in the product development space. So we have a service offering, we have a framework, but we use the proprietary tools available in the market. So we for example, are partnering with IBM. We have a partnership with Oracle, and so we have a partnership with certain select vendors in big data space. So we use their technologies as per the need, but we do have a framework, we do have a service offering, and so we have certain standard use cases like what I talked about in banking and insurance. We also have use cases identified in healthcare, in telco, and travel and the leisure industry. So we use those use cases, and we also use our partner technologies and then our frameworks and deliver results to the client. So there is one very generic question. I don't understand it fully. It's about what business models are being used for big data. So I would interpret this question as saying, what is the business context for implementing big data? So the business model is basically about, as I said, use technology like big data to supplement or to complement the efforts of your existing data warehousing and business intelligence efforts, and ensure that specific business and pain points are addressed. Okay. So there is another interesting question, which is the heart of big data, saying how accurate is the analysis of unstructured information, and is that reliable enough to make business decisions? And yes, that's a very interesting question. So that's where the basic challenge of big data lies. So what sense can you make out of unstructured data that's coming in? Okay. So the traditional attitude has been whatever is I can measure, whatever I can put a metric on, I will rely only on that. But today what companies are realizing is that my metric on customer satisfaction, which is based on a survey, maybe saying customer satisfaction is very high. But if I am getting a lot of customer complaints, then the tone in that customer complaint is that they are unhappy with my product or the way I am responding to their complaints. That tone is very important. So if your unstructured analysis is able to capture that tone, understand that tone, and then convert it into some kind of a score or some kind of a index which says customers are unhappy. And so that's a lot more valuable than a very hard metric that you are getting. Okay. So there is another question here on what are the factors which help in deciding when to go with traditional analytical approaches versus your big data approach. So I would answer this question by saying actually it is not a either or. So as I showed in one of my slides, so both the enterprise data warehouse approach and the big data approach actually coexist. So there's no question of saying this doesn't apply or we'll have to go only with that. But where the emphasis, but one clue I can give is that, or one hint I can give is that, so where the emphasis is on a lot of unstructured information, where the emphasis is on a lot of combination of structured and unstructured information, so then you'll have to go with the big data approach. Your existing data warehouses will not be sufficient for that. Another question from the practitioner point of view: what are the career prospects for big data? Is only Hadoop training helpful to start a career in big data, or is there any other tool? So my answer is that yes, Hadoop is a good starting point, but I don't think that's enough. So one needs to understand the business context also. So I kept talking about data scientists. If you look at the combination of traits that a data scientist should have, I mean, it starts with your understanding of business. You need to have an understanding of statistical models. You need to know the concepts of data warehousing and data mining well. And then, of course, the new technologies like Hadoop, MapReduce architecture, and things like this. So it's a combination of many things. But Hadoop, knowing Hadoop is definitely a good starting point. So there is a question on how do we get information about fraud management in claims process using big data analytics. So I would say that there are white papers available if you search for that. And then if you also look at some of the proprietary BI tool vendors, you will see a lot of white papers in their website. For example, SAS gives a lot of industry white papers on how fraud management is handled, and especially from a big data perspective. So there is a question about what are the opportunities for big data in staffing companies. So I understand that this is in IT industry. So what is the need for big data? Definitely big data skills is quite in demand. So many companies have a center of excellence set up specifically for big data. So people with skills in Hadoop technology, or people with skills in statistical modeling, people with skills in certain proprietary technologies are definitely welcome. Again, there's another question on should we migrate to big data if you're using structured data. So my answer to that is there is no single answer to that. It's not a question of either or again. So if you feel that your existing structured data is not giving you enough customer information, it's not giving you enough information to come up with what I call the next best offer, so you definitely take the big data route. Okay. There is a question on data privacy, which is of course central to the theme of big data. So the sheer amount of information available with enterprises about private lives of customers is scary. So doesn't big data breach this? So actually there is no privacy concerns are valid, but the traditional or the standard big data technologies, they don't actually intrude into the privacy of the customer. So whatever data we take is data from the public domain. Okay. So there is no question of intruding into the customer's privacy and picking up data and then doing analytics on that. So, there's a question on what's the future of big data in business. That's again a very open-ended question. The future is quite dramatically big today, I would say, because one sees from industry after industry that there is a lot of transformation that's happening because of the availability of big data. To take an example, healthcare is a sector which I haven't talked about in my presentation, but that is one sector where you see tremendous amount of changes happening, because a lot of patient information is coming out. Patients are talking about their treatment, patients are commenting about the kind of treatment effectiveness that they are seeing and things like this. So that's becoming a very rich source for information for all practitioners, for healthcare providers, for healthcare insurance companies, and even for life sciences research companies to understand how treatments are working. So this data was not available earlier. So this is one case where big data is actually, giving a kind of edge to what's happening in the industry today. So this, so where it had to be a very detailed clinical trial, now that information is now available to you with much lesser cost, and much more authentic data is available. So healthcare industry is going through a huge transformation because of big data. So to answer that question, yes, the future of big data is very bright as in every business today. Another interesting question, I kept talking about social media and unstructured data. So here the question is about, is it true that bulk of big data comes from social media? If there is no social media exposure, is big data relevant? So I think since we talked about social media, I mean, there is the confusion. So that's why I had a slide. Big data means many different things to many people. So someone can look at that, social media data and say that this is all big data is all about. So that's really untrue. So big data is much, much vaster than social media. So a company can do a lot of big data analytics without even looking at their social media data. So for example, you are collecting a lot of information about your machines. There could be a lot of machine related data that's available. You can collect a lot of information about your employees. So big data, the definition is anything which is not traditionally captured in your source systems. So that's big data, all right? So there is a question from a career perspective. So does big data provide opportunity for people with 10 plus years of experience, or they should start afresh? So the good answer, the good news to that is that it doesn't have to be that way. So your experience is definitely valuable. That's why I said big data is not a pure technology question or a pure business question. So if your 10 years of experience has given you enough context about your about your business, and if you are able to see opportunities for applying big data, I mean, you can be a big data expert in your field. It doesn't have, you don't have to go and sit and start learning Hadoop right now. Though it helps to have an overview of that, but you don't have to be actually a Hadoop programmer to be a big data expert. Here is a tool-based question which is asking about what are good visualization tools that are available in the market. So plenty of good visualization tools available. One that comes to my mind is ClickView, and which is a very small niche BI provider, but they're absolutely good as far as data visualization is concerned. And there is another tool called Tableau. So these are all leaders in this space. But most of the BI tools today, the traditional tools, are also scaling up as far as data visualization is concerned, whether it is Cognos or business objects. There's a lot of emphasis. But the tools that I talked about, ClickView and Tableau, are considered the most advanced in terms of visualization. Aradhana, do we have time for more questions, or should I stop here?
If you would like to take one last question, we can take one more question with this time that we have in hand, and then you can sum up the session for today.
Okay, sure, thank you. So I'll take this question which says, how does big data differ from enterprise data warehouse? I thought I answered that briefly, but let me again answer that and end with that concluding remark on big data and EDW. As I said, enterprise data warehouse is about creating a single data repository, while big data differs from that approach. So big data is not concerned about creating one repository or dealing with only few source systems. So the whole understanding is that real data relevant for your business can come from any source, either inside your company or outside your company. So while the concern of EDW is always about certain source systems, extracting data from them, putting it in one repository, big data is not concerned about that. Big data is saying, let's go after data wherever it is, in whatever form it is, and then analyze it then and there. So that is the whole approach. And in a way, that's a whole theme of what I talked about also, that big data is a kind of combination of many different technologies, many different tools, and we also see an integration across many things like your data warehousing and business intelligence, social media analysis, mobility, and cloud and things like this. So all of them are coming together with the power to transform business. And I talked about two use cases, one in banking and one in insurance. And both the cases, the theme was to understand the process well and to bring in a big data insight. So the whole belief is that with this kind of an approach, that you will be able to bring about the transformation, whether it is in product leadership or operational excellence or in customer intimacy. So with that, let me wind up my presentation. Thanks to all of you for your patient listening and also for asking a lot of interesting questions. Thanks, Aradhana. I'm done.
And I am really thankful to our guest speaker today for conducting this wonderful webinar. It was indeed a great session. And I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgig.com by tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Srinivasan, for taking the time out. Have a great evening ahead.
Thank you.